Next, we'll be talking about Walter Sallis's much lauded film I'm Still Here, starring Fernanda Torres in a absolutely whirlwind powerhouse performance that recently just won the Golden Globe. The film takes place during the military dictatorship in Brazil and follows the Paiva family as their patriarch Rubens is taken for questioning and never returns. We follow along as the mother of the family, Eunice Paiva, struggles with her own children, looking after them, and also struggling to try and get the truth about her husband's disappearance. Now, this film was quite a shock to me as it sort of appeared from nowhere. After the Golden Globe win from Fernanda Torres, it suddenly sparked a huge interest in people in this country especially. When I went to see it in the cinema, it was absolutely packed. And I thought, quite rightly so. But I'm going to pass off to you, Alex, to talk more in depth about it. And I want to know all your feelings, how you felt watching the movie, how, as Brazilian yourself, how you thought about how it represented everything.
Man, I think just like you, I didn't see it coming. Obviously, I was born and raised in Brazil. I'm not too up to date with everything that's going on in there, like film wise, and I didn't think it would be this big of a deal. Like I was already supporting the film before I watched it, just because I was so happy to see one of our films do so well outside. But I didn't see it coming. Basically, I really loved it. I really loved it because it feels like it's the right time for a film like this to come out. It's been in the making, I think, for 7 years. It took them to film that, and I think little did they know that it would really match by the time it came out and be so important where we are now. I think what I loved it most was Fernanda Torres, because I think as an actress, it was so beautiful to see. And it's a rare thing and it's tempting to go the complete opposite way of that as an actor. That's what really shook me, is that she's always fighting her emotions. I think that's what really got me. That's what really convinced me, is that every scene she's fighting to internalize it. She's being as resilient as she can. She's being a soldier, and she's always keeping it together for the family. And she never really allows herself to fully express her emotions, her fears, and things like that. And I think as an actor, when you're given a role like that, I think you would ideally want to show what you're feeling. You'd want to show the struggles. You would want to show everything. And I feel like that was such a brave, bold choice. I know she was directed that way as well, but just the fact that she's always keeping it in just allows us to feel more for her. I feel like that is such a powerful choice. I think that's why we're so captivated with her, because she's keeping it together the whole time. We've chatted before. You guys know I'm a fan of simplicity. The film was so simple. I was afraid it would be kind of too political for me, like, a lot of names and what happened. And if you don't really know the history of Brazil, are you going to keep up with it? Like dictatorship in Brazil, what do you have to know beforehand, kind of thing? And it really wasn't. You just follow this happy, happy, happy family lose their father, and then their world kind of just crumbles down. It's that simple. And for some reason, you go on this journey with them. It's not like a single heartbreak. I think you're slowly coming to the realization that the father is not coming back, as Eunice Paiva does. And it's just so heartbreaking. I had like silent tears just coming down the whole time. I don't know how you guys felt. I just felt like the cinema was so, you could hear a pin drop. I feel like the silent moments were so powerful. Like the ice cream scene and everything was so gut punching. I can't really think of anything negative. It's been a while since I've watched a film like that. I'd like to think that it's not just because I'm Brazilian. Obviously, there's, like I've learned about the dictatorship, the shots and everything really spoke to me. The beaches and, Christmas is summer for us. That kind of stuff really spoke to me on a personal level. I'd like to think that I would be just as moved if it was a French film or whatever. Yeah. Obviously, maybe not to the same extent, but I was just really genuinely moved. And as a Brazilian, I'd love to see that an international film is doing so well, and that Fernanda is getting such a big recognition. Her mother, I'm sure a lot of you guys know this, did a film 26 years ago with the same director called Central Station, and she got an Oscar nomination for that. And just a fun fact, like in Brazil, she didn't win that year, right? But we can't believe that happened. We're saying now in Brazil that it's like a World Cup scenario where, because World Cup in Brazil means the world to us. The whole country's painted like green and yellow. Everyone goes out in the streets. You miss work, to watch the games and things like that. And that's how Brazil is right now with Fernanda. It's kind of scary because if she loses, I don't know what is going to happen to the internet, because everyone's betting their houses like, she has to win this Oscar. And I was kind of feeling the same way, like super anxious. Like, I don't know why I felt this anxiety, like my life depended on it. Like, oh God, I loved her. I loved the film so much. Like, she has to take it home. She has to do it for our people, kind of thing. Obviously, I know it's really hard because I think we're at a disadvantage when it comes to the Oscars and things like that, because it's an international film. I feel like the film only got attention now. We didn't have that time to really sell it, whereas the substance has kind of been around for a while. It had a bigger marketing and things like that. We shall see what happens. I don't know why us Brazilians, we have this sense of like, come on, we need to take this one home. I think it's to do her mother justice 26 years ago, but yeah, that's a little that's where we're at. If you want a little Brazilian taste from our end, that's kind of where we're at, just kind of fully rooting for her.
It's so interesting to hear it from your point of view. I mean, I have to say off the bat, I wasn't very familiar with this historical time period, I'm embarrassed to say, and I didn't know the story of Rubens Paiva and his family. And so I found this really, really engrossing and really shocking and really, really moving. You talked about, the pin drop silence in the cinema and silent tears. I mean, I was very much in the same boat. I was colossally moved by this. I thought it was a really, really powerful piece of work because it actually talks about so many things. As you say, it talks about motherhood, and it talks about motherhood brilliantly. It talks about political awakening. It talks about ambition in later life. And it talks about the way that, we all essentially kind of come together at some point later in our lives and are able to see things more clearly than perhaps we can in the moment. And that very sort of slow drip, drip, drip of grief as you realise, okay, their dad isn't coming back, is really brilliantly done, because you feel so connected to the characters because you're realising that fact along with them. I mean, I guess if you know the story, then perhaps you won't have that experience, but I didn't, and so I was really upset at times by this. But I also found the central performance utterly compelling. I think she's unbelievably brilliant, Fernanda Torres. I wish it wasn't such a tight race at the Oscars, because I think she's probably my second favourite, because I think I'm too much of a substance stan. But I think she's amazing. I think she's absolutely amazing. She does so much with the quiver of a lip. You can tell exactly what she is thinking all the time. And you're absolutely right, Alex, that so much of it is internalised. She doesn't want other people to worry. She doesn't want her children to be scared. And you see the toll as well that has on her. So I found myself kind of inspired by this film because it's really important. I think some people could write it off as being worthy because, it does have a very political angle. But I thought it was such brave filmmaking and such important filmmaking because it talks about the importance of having courage and being brave and standing up to adversity and standing up for what's right. And I think that perhaps this is particularly on the mind because we have Donald Trump in the White House. We have a man declaring himself king on his personal X account. I think that we are currently seeing a rising tide where political chaos in America and around the world seems more possible. This film makes you realise that this can happen anywhere. This isn't something that just happened in Brazil. This is a story that actually has happened many, many times in many places over human history and will continue to do so. So honestly, I thought it was really impressive, shocking, upsetting, but so moving, so beautiful. The family scenes are just completely gorgeous. You believe 100% that these people live together and love each other. They're such a tight-knit group, and I felt like one of them. I was so emotionally connected to each and every member of this family. I'm really keeping my fingers crossed for this at the Oscars. I'd be delighted if it won in any of its 3 categories.
Well, I think this film is spectacular. As Alex said, he couldn't really find anything to fault about the film, and to be honest, neither can I, in the regards that the performances are all solid, especially the kids. All the kids in this, we focus so solidly on the very beginnings of this terrible ordeal that the Paiva family go through. And all the kids, and they're very young actors as well, do an excellent job of just selling the severity of it. What this film does expertly well is because we have seen many films where people are under severe occupation under dictatorships. A lot of very effective and wonderful films like The Pianist, Schindler's List, and Death of Stalin even as a good example of where you see the ordeal that they're under even through different lenses, drama and comedy. This film does something very different, which I thought was very effective, is that you actually see the family living a happy life on beautiful sunsets, this golden film look, you know, it's very warm, it's very beautiful. You know, the Super 8 itself, it has this very warming, nostalgic quality, even though obviously I didn't grow up in Brazil, but it has a nostalgic feel to the life of when you were that young with your parents and just having an eternal summer. But the effective thing is, when dealing with this topic of the control of right-wing or dictatorships, is that they're always bubbling under the surface. We do get a very early on scene where people are just driving in a car smoking weed, then a whole blockade shows up, and then you're pulled over and you see the deal of the military dictatorship. But then they sort of hush for a while until the real inciting incident shows up. And that really is just, it shows that people need to be careful, because people can be so swept up in the idea of, oh no, everything's fine, it doesn't matter. Yes, there's undercurrents of political tension, but it can happen to anyone. That, you know, the people who think that they have power and control, and people who believe that they are better than others, can just strip away people's lives without care and just deny and lie. And I think it was so effective at doing that, because you've got this beautiful family, rich, wealthy family, live in this beautiful house by the sea, lots of friends, eating food, you know, all these wonderful scenes that you get of a wonderful, happy family life completely upended all of a sudden, and people going through torture, and also emotional torture through decades. And I thought, wow, what an effective film, and what a necessary film for right now, where right-wing values have become seemingly popular again for whatever reason. We need films like this to really upend the belief that it'll make things safer, because it never does. But more on a filmmaking point of view, I just thought that it was so neatly done, and it's quite a long film. It does traverse several different periods, but it's very effective. It has a quite haunting end, haunting throughout, but it also has a lot of hope, which is what I really like, and what you sometimes lack in modern films so much, because it is quite a dour political spectrum across the world. It was a truly fabulous performance, and by the central character. Fernanda Torres was just absolutely, I've never seen her in anything before, never heard of her before, to my own shame, but I was just so locked in. I could have watched that performance for way, way longer. It's so close, the race at the Oscars, that it is almost unfair, where it's sort of the winners of other categories are becoming very underlined and very common, whereas this one, it's a toss-up. You know, Mikey Madsen won the BAFTA, and, you know, Demi Moore is very hot on the tails too, and so we have to think, well, I really would hope that she wins the Oscar. But it is so perfect, because it shows that motherhood, it's a beautiful demonstration of that. It's a great historical artifact. It does very accurately represent the characters from the past. The recreations are very fluid, but it doesn't feel forced, like so often in biopics that we watch. Most notably the one we watched recently in Complete Unknown, where they labour to recreate iconic moments.
Don't remind me, Jake.
This film recreates moments so effortlessly. You know, you see the photographs and the recreations of it. I knew it was a true story, but halfway through I was like, no, this is just fabricated, inspired by true stories. But no, it's so pinpoint accurate to how they represent it. And, you know, it's a real testament to the director and the production team. It was just perfect, like genuinely perfect. It's a very heavy watch, so you have to be in a certain mood to watch it, but so necessary right now. I think you have to watch it, pass it on to your friends, and make them watch it too. I really can't say much more about it, apart from, well, practical perfection in a film like this, really.
I agree, man. In a way, I'd like to think that that's a win in itself, you know, when it comes to all these ceremonies and things like that. I think I'm just thinking she already won kind of thing, like everything she's achieved and how well the film is doing and how it's touching everyone's hearts kind of thing. I think that's a win in itself. It's just that cherry on top, you know what I mean? Like, oh, come on, let her take home the Oscar kind of thing.
Oh, I hope it wins over Emilia Perez. I hope it wins.
Oh man, me too. It deserves it as well. I'm like, come on, it's not because it's personal. It is personal, but it's not. In this case, I genuinely, it's the same thing with Demi Moore. I loved her in that. I like the substance. but I'm like, I would go with Fernanda regardless. Let's see.